Okay, I'd like to let us begin. So today I'd like to invite you to I think we're in the fourth session of the Purchasing Power series that's currently taking place. And we've been talking about a number of different topics. And today we're going to talk about how can social procurement support diversity and inclusion. And first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I work with Scale Collaborative, and normally I work on the unceded territories of the Algonquin speaking peoples, now known as the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. And I am currently in Vancouver working on the unceded territories of the Musqueam Nation. So it's great to be here. And my name is Kristi Fairholm-Mader, and I am the project coordinator, project manager of the BC Social Procurement Initiative. And just want to remind everyone to mute yourself, please, if you can, or Tori might mute you as we go. And so it's a real privilege here to be here on behalf of the BC Social Procurement Initiative and to be co-facilitating with Tori Williamson. Do you want to give yourself a introduction, Tori?
Thanks, Kristi. Hi, everyone. Great to have you all here today. Really looking forward to this discussion. And I'm joining you from traditional Squamish territory.
So a little bit about the BC Social Procurement Initiative. BCSPI is a local government member-led initiative where we're really thinking of these areas of action and sharing the learning and the best practices across this whole membership so we can advance, measure, and engage in ways that we can use our purchasing to create social, environmental, cultural impact in the communities where we work and live. All local governments and community institutional purchasers are welcome to join the BC Social Procurement Initiative with that overall goal of improving the health of communities and the strength of economies. So that's the goal of it. And when people join the initiative, they receive a number of different benefits. And we're really looking at how to build knowledge, to build the capacity within local governments and institutional purchasers, and then help implement practices that increase community benefits, increase value made through purchasing. So this is the member page. This is what it looks like when after organizations join. There's best practice examples and a community of practice. There's templates and guides and resources that help track and how to create social value templates and how to incorporate social procurement and other ways to achieve community benefit right into the request for proposals, how to use small spends to achieve those local values and benefits. We have consultation and support, so direct hands-on support. We have training, both sort of offered widely across the membership as well as specific to organizations. So sometimes we'll do training for like leadership teams, for councils, all that sort of stuff, so that we can build that culture and buy-in across organizations. We have a stacked webinar library because BCSPI has been in process for about 2.5 years. So there's been lots of webinars and things that have happened. So great resources to tap into, as well as lots of online resources, libraries of what other communities are doing, different kind of policies and practices, resources, reports, and so on. We do vendor engagement in terms of providing guides and support on how to reach out and engage vendors. And we're also developing out and about to be launching a collective impact measurement framework, which is a huge part of any procurement, is what's the impact of the dollars that you're spending. And so this has again been guided by and led by local governments and community-based purchasers around how do you align those dollars to the impacts and in particular to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that's really great. And then we'll be able to measure across the collective as well as individually at an organization community level. Currently, we have about 32 members across BC. So it started on Vancouver Island and the coast and it's been expanding. So we have new members, Pemberton, that have joined, and continuing to kind of grow from the coast into the interior. So really excited to see this membership grow. And one of the things that is important is that we recognize that each community has its own context, its own social and environmental challenges. There's lots of themes across organizations, but really we're looking at standardized yet adaptable approaches to meet the specific community challenges and priorities. So that's pretty exciting to see the innovation and the different ways that procurement is being utilized and leveraged to achieve greater benefit. So one of the things that we looked at was what are some of the issues that are facing local communities significantly. And we polled our membership and asked for what are the critical topics that you're facing right now that could benefit from procurement alignment. And from that, there was about 15 topics that came up, and we started with 5. And this is what we have based this series on, the purchasing power, which is engaging Indigenous businesses, supporting local economies, and increasing food security. And that was before Christmas. And you can still go and see those recordings and the resources and summary of those sessions by going to the BC Social Procurement webpage. And now we're talking about equity and diversity, addressing climate change, and then we'll have a final wrap-up event that's really around what is happening at the local community level and how do we implement and how do we do more of this, and looking at identifying target potential pilots to move forward. So today we're going to talk about how can procurement support diversity and inclusion. And I wanted to say, like this, I found some very interesting stats as I was really prepping for this and learning a lot in this area. And I thought, here we have public sector acquisition of goods and services is 13% of Canada's gross domestic product. And that's a significant amount of spend that governments across all levels are making into our supply chains. And so it makes it this fundamental lever in order to achieve environmental and social objectives. Like it's just a huge amount of spend in there. And yet we see that when we look at who's being procured from, that many groups of people are being left out of that procurement process. And that's been traditional. And this is what's exciting, is that we're at a time where that has got a spotlight on it and we have an opportunity for great change. So some of the examples of when we look at what inclusive and diversity and accessibility means, these are the groups that have been identified by many documents as being groups to target. So Indigenous Canadians, and we talked about how to engage Indigenous businesses in our first session. Women, racialized Canadians, this is the words from the Government of Canada, and people with disabilities. So this is some of the target groups that federal government is looking at trying to increase its accessibility and diversity. And they have lots of strategies around it. We can see that happening at the federal government level, but we know that there is a ton of spending that happens at the provincial level and still significantly at the local level. So we can see these as some inspiration and guidance, but there's a lot that can be done in other levels of government spending as well. And some of that is that we see that less percent of spending, and this comes from the US stat, because stats are really hard to find on this, and maybe Nerissa will be able to add to this, and Dugan as well. Now, less than 10% goes to small disadvantaged businesses, which is the US term that they're using in terms of looking for equity deserving groups and how to increase the engagement there. We see that less than 1% of government contracts are procured from women-owned businesses. So there's lots of room to grow there. And that what was interesting around with people with disabilities is that they tend to have lower employment rates, but higher self-employment rates. And we can see that lots of people with disabilities can create jobs to meet their own terms to bring forward their skills and abilities there. So we see this opportunity that can open up. And one of the things I did want to say specifically around people with disabilities is that there is a free trade agreement exemption specifically from procuring from people with disabilities, similar as there is a free trade agreement exemption for nonprofits. Anyway, so without further ado, I just want to introduce our 2 speakers today, and I'm going to stop my share. And here they are, and going to just Nerissa. And I'm just going to read her bio. So excuse me as I look to the side of my screen for a moment. As an entrepreneur and community leader, Nerissa is the owner and director of Chattel House Health and Beauty Incorporated, a registered massage therapy clinic and global brand known for clean skincare. And Nerissa is also the co-founder and president of the Black Business Association of BC. And BBABC supports Black businesses and entrepreneurship through leadership development programs to increase market access, skills development, networking, and opportunities to input into policy decision-making at various levels of government. So it's great to have Nerissa here today. And we have Dugan Selkirk. So Dugan Selkirk is an entrepreneur, investor, advisor, and father with over 20 years experience of launching and financing startups, as experience as CEO, a CTO, and CRO, of which I don't know what a CRO is. So, Dugan is deeply committed to making a positive contribution to the world as his children are growing into. And Dugan is currently a business advisor to Community Futures, the Entrepreneurs with Disabilities program, and Rise Asset Development, providing startup financing for entrepreneurs recovering from addiction and mental illness. So really, really excited to have both Nerissa and and Dugan here. And as we talked about before, we'll go back and forth around questions. We'll have a conversation for about 20-25 minutes. We'll open it up for questions from the group, and then we'll finish up with some other lessons learned along the way. So Nerissa, let's start with you. Can you tell us more about yourself, about the Black Business Association of BC? And so why does the organization exist, and what are you trying to achieve?
Certainly. Thanks for having me here, Kristi. And I just want to acknowledge that I am working on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. So a little bit about myself. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a passion to empower entrepreneurs in our community to reach their greatest capacity. So we founded this organization to really challenge ourselves to bring our businesses to the next level. Our organization exists to support entrepreneurs and small business owners and small businesses in a very operational capacity. So we believe building a strong foundation is the key to a thriving, sustainable business. And that foundation really needs to include skills development for entrepreneurs. It needs to include operational business development. So this, in conjunction with addressing the challenges and the barriers facing our business community, will allow for true long-term impact. And I guess in essence, we were specifically addressing the lack of access to training that has been curated with a community-focused lens. There's a lot of material out there. We focus on creating training opportunities and content that is going to be the most impactful for the needs of our community. Things like cash flow and forecasting, grant writing, business plan writing, mentorship, providing access to an array of mentors who have lived experience dealing with systemic racism and are therefore culturally attuned, as well as mentors from outside the community who also have a wealth of experience and knowledge from which we can learn. And then we look at representation at policymaking tables. We work with 3 levels of government to ensure that culturally specific lens is included in discussion, so that as policies are created going forward, that they are meeting the needs of all the communities.
Great, thank you. And Nerissa, I'm wondering if you could tell me as a follow-up, when you talk about policies, what kind of policy areas are you looking at or focusing on or advising government on?
So I think, we've been invited to speak at various levels. So we've been invited to speak to at roundtables with Procurement Assistance Canada with regards to their procurement policy. We have been invited to speak with provincial levels of government here in BC to talk about racism within the systemic infrastructure of building, and how policies that they create, how they could be impacted by how they can impact the Black community from a jobs perspective, as well as a business perspective, as well as just an anti-racism perspective. So we have been invited to various tables, and we're happy to lend our voice, because if we don't speak up for what is needed in our community, we're not going to see the change we need in policies as we go forward.
Great, thank you so much. Dugan, how about you? Tell us a bit more about yourself, the work that you do with Community Futures, specifically with the Entrepreneurs with Disabilities program.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Nerissa, for being here, and thanks, Kristi, for asking me to be part of this, and Tori and the Bisocial. You guys are doing amazing stuff, and it's just great to be part of. Let's see here. So I'm coming to you today from the overlapping territories of Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Stolo nations in a little zone called the North Shore. And let's see, how did I get here? So yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, recovering entrepreneur, I guess. And then for me, I happened to experience a few brain injuries related to my prior athletic lifestyle. So I've had the experience of sort of losing, access to my executive functioning capacity for a long time, and working to kind of claw back that capacity. And so anyway, so that's all kind of how I ended up on this call here today. So yeah, our goal is, like Nerissa, to just bring entrepreneurship as a viable outcome for members of our community, and help support the community through entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Nerissa, what are some of the specific barriers that you see or have experienced as a business owner through the procurement process? Like, what do you see happening around some of the barriers that might exist?
I think as an organization, and what we're seeing is we have three main areas where we have to strategize on how to make it better for barriers for what we are facing right now. So we have been dealing with readiness and capacity for businesses and being able to step forward as viable contenders as vendors. We have to look at our global competitiveness as a community and as individual businesses, and we have to look at digital adoption uptake. It's been a barrier that we've been working through, and I think a lot of businesses, even outside of the Black community, have been dealing with COVID bringing to light the fact that we just were not at the place we needed to be for digital adoption. And we have to deal with the uptake of that. And we also have to be able to have purchasers find our vendors. So those are the three areas where our organization is working to find ways to address those three barriers.
Can you talk a little bit more? I know you mentioned it at the beginning, but can you talk a little bit over what you do to support Black-owned or Black-led businesses to increase procurement capacity when contracting with those kind of purchasers, how to create more visibility and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had backgrounds at each point in the spectrum where we encounter barriers. With regards to readiness and capacity, we've partnered with government and private stakeholders to deliver workshops. In late 2020 and 2021, we had the provinces of BC and Alberta create workshops for our members to be ready to apply for provincial tenders. In May of 2021, we had Procurement Assistance Canada put on a 6-week boot camp for our members. And that initiative is going to continue throughout 2022. We also look at brand awareness because our businesses need to be able to tell their stories. So we have partnered with a local business called Kaiso Careers to support the development of clear and authentic branding for our businesses so they can, refine and tell their stories. We've also partnered with Buy Social Canada to work with our members on social procurement readiness. So there's a lot of pieces that go into play, and we're just trying to knock them off one at a time in terms of getting our businesses ready. In terms of addressing competitiveness on the global stage, we're positioning our businesses to be global citizens. We want them to be competitive among their peers. We've partnered with Climate Smart to support the measuring of our current, of each individual current carbon footprint, looking at creating a carbon reduction strategy, and then employing carbon offsets to work towards being carbon neutral. And this includes BBABC. We as an organization, we're also going to be going through that process of measuring our carbon footprint, creating a reduction strategy, as well as employing offsets to work towards being carbon neutral as an organization. It's important to lead by example, and we want to make sure that whatever we are bringing to our members as strategies to be more competitive on the global stage, that we are also doing it as an organization. We look to have, when we're creating business strategies for our members and in their business plans, we're always looking to have them align their business strategies in support of UN sustainable goals. That's an important part of being a global citizen. So we have various strategies that we use to become more competitive on that global stage. And then in terms of access and digital adoption, we built an online platform to support the identification of Black-owned vendors. That website is Black Biz Global, and it's launching on February 1st. And then we also have an in-house team to support the development and the building of effective modern websites and technological integrations that's going to help to bring our businesses to the next level. Yeah, and I see you put it in the chat, so thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll drop in resources as we talk about them as we go through. Could you just paint a picture of what Black-owned businesses look like in BC? What types, how many, what size? A little bit of just context painting for us.
Yeah, we have a range. They range from solopreneurs, we have restaurateurs, we have barbershops, hairstylists, we have food service businesses, we have many in trades, we have many in business services, accountants, bookkeeping. I think it's across the gamut. We have apparel, we have skincare and body care. It's a big range in BC. And when you look across Canada, it's an even bigger range. And we have businesses who their specialties are looking at supplying products that are made right here in Vancouver. We have businesses that source products from other countries and are helping in communities in places such as Ghana, for example. They're helping to build communities through accessing raw materials that they can use then to create products here in BC. So it's a very wide range of businesses that we have here. And I think what we need to do as an organization is to highlight them and to provide a platform where you can come and find what it is you're looking for, because we cover so many different areas.
Great, thank you. So to build on a bit of what Nerissa was talking about in terms of accessing and procurement opportunities, Dugan, can you talk about what you see as being some of the barriers and opportunities specifically for persons with disabilities being able to access government contracts and institutional purchasing?
Yeah, I think similar to Nerissa, like the barrier is scale. And so for us, we call what we're doing investment readiness, but I really like that term procurement readiness, because one big contract, it will change your life, right? So for us, it's, and you might need financing to do that, right? If you're used to selling 60 units a month and this contract is for 6,000, you're going to have to do something a little bit differently. But so I think there'll be an interplay between those two. And honestly, doing this workshop and it has given us, a lot to think about in terms of how we might strategize our clients for a procurement opportunity rather than, just trying to run ads on social media to get customers, right? So it's given us something to think about, and that's really important. But yeah, it's, a thing that I say, like, what you seek is seeking you, right? It's an expression that I like. And so there's all these startups out there that are looking for money. And honestly, there's just as many, investment bankers and lenders that are looking for deal flow. And the issue is speaking the same language, right? So like Nerissa and her clients, it's that business planning, cash flow forecasting. Like you have to be able to see, like, visualize and in writing, like, how am I going to get to that level of scale where I can bid on a big contract? And then how am I going to present myself as a viable contender for the contract? So that's, I think, where we help, because for whatever reason, we've learned that language. And so we're able to kind of match the two. And what we're lucky with our lenders is we're able to work with our lenders and sort of groom the deals before they're presented. So to have an opportunity like that in a procurement setting would be really cool. Typically our client applies for funding, gets declined, and that's the end of it, right? And then they find us, and we have in many cases been able to go back to the same lender with a more refined sort of roadmap, and they've gotten approved. So if we were able to have a relationship like that, and Community Futures does have voice into both provincial and federal levels, so why we couldn't do that, I don't know. So I think that might be a good way to sort of leverage the relationships that we have, is to be able to work collaboratively toward a win-win for a procurement involving a person with a ability challenge. But other than that, the big one is access to the capital to buy the, what I mean, if you have to 10x your inventory order to make this deal happen, then, being able to go to a lender that we have a relationship with and say, look, time to go big, like they've hit all of their other milestones that they've said that they would. And so I think that those are two good ways that we'd be able to support our clients in this world.
And this comes up a lot, Dugan, that in our conversations with purchasers, is that there's a real desire to purchase from small businesses, of which we know that a lot of diverse suppliers tend to be small businesses and micro businesses and laddering up. And that one of the ways of really thinking through a social procurement strategy is to focus in on what are the small spends that don't have to go to RFP. What are the direct awards that can begin to take place? How do you carve off sections of a larger contract to be able to essentially ladder businesses into greater and greater contracts, because you begin to build that capacity. And we've seen that work effectively with some of our members who have done that, who have isolated parts of contracts, worked with local suppliers, worked with diverse suppliers, and that has built that capacity in that process so that they're not going from small to all of a sudden having to deliver on a federal government contract, which is massive, but being able to start at that local or smaller institutional purchasing level. And that really has an amazing thing in being able to build capacity for those businesses, those local businesses, those diverse businesses to increase and grow in order to then, grow their business as well, which is great. I came across this interesting quote that I liked, and it's like, inclusive procurement, I'm just reading off my screen here, offers a huge opportunity to address issues of inequality and income disparity, increase employment, and build wealth in communities. And that inclusive and social procurement taps into businesses that tend to be overlooked. So it actually broadens supply chains at the same time, which makes a really good business case for social and inclusive procurement. So I have a question for Nerissa. I wanted to shift to the buyer's perspective now. So we talked about, the vendors and the suppliers, and that there's buyers, and these conversations really try to speak to both sides of the story. I'm just wondering what strategies buyers can use to diversify their supply chain, and what you've seen work and what challenges that crop up, and if you could speak to that.
Sure. I think the first thing to do is really just take stock. What does your current supply network look like? I think once you know what you purchase and from whom you currently purchase, now you can research options on to help you diversify. What products and services can you explore additional vendor options? Business relationships are extremely important, and creating a strategy to diversify will take time to implement. And I don't think you want to cut ties with current vendors. All businesses are important and need support. But what I think you would want to start to do is look at ways you can spread your purchasing power across a more diversified pool of vendors. That's a great place and a great option to start. Some things to consider, will you be expanding in the near future? Perhaps you don't need to alter your current suppliers, but integrate your diversification plan into your business expansion. I know we've heard the challenge of being able to find vendors outside of your current business community, and we have created that online directory and e-commerce platform specifically not just to support B2C business, but B2B and B2G sourcing and relationship building. So once again, I'm going to say Black Biz Global is launching on February 1st. You can go over to the landing page right now and register for our email subscription, so you'll get notified of once we launch and get information on that. If you can't find a vendor, there's going to be a simple form on that homepage to complete where you can request support in finding a vendor in our membership and in our community. We're happy to give you a demo of the platform if you reach out to me at info@blackbusinessbc.ca. We also have a trade show scheduled for June 15th, and that's supported by Social Canada, where vendors in our membership will be showcasing their products and services. And if you're a purchaser and you're interested in being invited to that trade show, please email me again at info@blackbusinessbc.ca. Great.
I'm going to reach out to Tori here. So Tori, I'm wondering if you would be able to, because we talked about the vendor perspective, a little bit of some of the strategies that buyers can implement. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to talked about sharing a couple of policy examples of how BCSPI members have implemented goals and strategies, or I'm going to say policy directives around inclusion and diversity into their policies, if you wanted to speak to that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kristi. And I think we've got purchasers or past purchasers from these organizations here today. So maybe they'll chime in the chat if there's anything that I missed. But two that we wanted to kind of highlight are the City of Victoria. Their purchasing policy includes a few elements that look at diversity and procurement. So they set their key objectives as social justice, which is around removing systemic barriers, intersectionality, which reflects multiple lived experiences, quality of life through health, happiness, and satisfaction, and finally, resilience and prosperous community through inclusion and access. So I'll share the link for that in the chat here. The other example that we mentioned, so you can see there the kind of the high level, what they're working towards, and then through the policy, if you look through that link, you'll see that they've kind of got diversity and inclusion as some of those key elements, thinking about what types of businesses they're working with, as well as what types of employment they're seeking in their purchasing. The other one is the District of Squamish procurement policy, and they highlight that some really key kind of social value objectives as well that they're looking for. And the framing that they have for theirs is maximizes diversification and social impact of the supply chain by including social enterprises, First Nations suppliers, and local small enterprises. So in that context, their diversity is looking at working with First Nations businesses. And then also thinking about maximizing employment, training, and work integrated learning opportunities among local disadvantaged, equity deserving, or marginalized individuals and populations. So in both of those policies, we're kind of seeing different types of groups that are going to be sought in the procurement process as ways of targeting social value. So I'll share the link for that one as well. And then I think the other one you had notes on, Kristi, was federally. And we also have people on the call from PSPC. So I feel like this is almost like a test here. Make sure I get this right. So we've seen actually diversity in procurement, a big part of the mandate letters, and a couple of the recent speeches from the throne have mentioned this around, how can diversity show up in procurement, and Public Service and Procurement Canada incorporating that as well. So we have some notes here from one of their documents, which is around increasing supplier diversity as an important part of the government's agenda to generate economic opportunity for underrepresented minority and Indigenous peoples. And I know that they recently had, maybe it wasn't that recent, but it felt recent, time flies these days, their Black business pilot. So I don't know if I've seen published results for that, but they had, I think it was around 10 wide variety of purchases that were specifically targeted to Black-owned small businesses. So really interesting to see how the policies are being shaped and the direction is being shaped by these different organizations. And then now it's important to see, okay, what's that resulting in? What's the reporting out that we're going to see? What are the contracts that are achieved? How has that created impact in communities for those groups that Dugan and Nerissa are working so hard to support?
Great, thank you so much. So let's come back now. Let's talk about impact. And so, Nerissa, how about for you, if you were to talk about what would be possible, what would change? What are the stories that could come if we began to see a shift or a really targeted effort in diversifying purchasing and supply chains?
Right. I think you're empowering change in communities that have been impacted by systemic barriers, and as these communities grow, they increase their economic impact on their social communities, on their local community, on their local economy, and on the Canadian economy as a whole. So we're building a stronger Canada for everyone. And no one's looking for a break or a handout. Businesses just want to be able to participate in all the activities that make a healthy business community and to be part of ensuring Canada's economic that Canada's economy is flourishing. So, there's a good story of one of our members. Her name is Nashika Williams, and she's the CEO of Nashika Fashion. She's a local Vancouver designer who creates beautiful apparel and accessories from textiles that are made in Ghana. So she sells her products online and expanded to pop-up shops after participating in our BBABC pop-up marketplace that we had in July of 2021. And during that event, she was able to make connections with other local business owners and purchasers, which resulted in her landing a few supplier contracts. And now she's expanded that business and is expanding to body care, and not only increasing her footprint here in Canada, but she's also impacting the lives of the communities in Ghana where she sources her raw products. So it's really amazing the ripple effect that procurement can make. Just as Dugan was saying, it can be life-changing for a business to land not even a huge contract, but just some good solid contracts with a few different purchasers makes a huge difference in a small business, in a business that's a solopreneur right now, or one that has less than 5 employees. It makes a big difference, and not only makes a big difference for them, but it makes a big difference for everyone that's in their network as well. So I think that as Dugan mentioned, it's amazing, it's impactful, and it's impactful in a ripple way.
Great, thank you. All right, we'd like to open it up for questions. I have one in the chat that I'll ask, and I'll ask starting with Nerissa. So we have Allison who's wondering if there's any risk of marginalized businesses being paid less than dominant business owners, and is there a way to ensure that this doesn't happen? That it's not we don't see a price drop or that sort of thing taking place. I'm wondering if you can comment on that.
I think it's about transparency of contracts, and as a purchaser, if you're putting out a tender, or I think that as long as we have policies in place where transparency is key to creating or contracting, I think that is where we need to ensure that we don't have situations like that happening. I think it's about transparency in the policy and in the implementation of the contract.
Right. Nerissa, I'm wondering if you could talk about the impact of the pandemic on the businesses that you work with, and what you've seen has been some effective responses around that.
Yeah, I think the impact with every business, not just those in our community, the impact has been horrendous. And you've had businesses that did not sustain, those that are trying to keep the doors open right now, and that's our main focus. And that has been our main focus, is how do we help businesses keep the doors open until we see a better time. And I think some of the tools we've been using is to really move businesses quickly online so that they can garner sales from a larger market. We had a lot of businesses that were doing things in person, and that just doesn't work. And we spent a lot of time and dollars really pushing digital adoption. We had to get businesses online in terms of a website. They had to be websites that are modern and that look professional. So, and we had businesses that did have websites, but maybe they built them themselves and they're not really where they need to be. So we have to help with that as well. So I think one of the biggest pivots that businesses had to make was getting online, and then looking at ways to diversify, their portfolio. So, for example, myself, as we have a massage therapy clinic, and we had to close. Obviously, that's not a service that can remain open. But what we did is we looked at, we created skincare and massage oils and things like that could be sold to our clients that they can use in the interim while we were closed, right? So, and a lot of businesses had to do that kind of pivot where, okay, I can't provide this service. I may not be able to provide a gym service right now, but maybe I can create a video with a workout that I can sell to the clients that they can use during the closure. So pivoting and digital adoption, two big things throughout the pandemic that helped the businesses that did survive.
Great, thank you. And as a sort of your final comment, I'd love each of you to give one recommendation, either to a business or to a buyer of what's one step that they could do to either increase their getting a contract or diversify their purchasing. Just one recommendation on a next step. Dugan, how about we start with you and then have Nerissa?
Sure. I think, I would say to the business owners, reach out for help. Like, we are here, like there are so many resources available and that will help you take your business out of your head into reality. And you do really need that support, those bridges into financing, into marketing, into procurement. So I would say, ask for help, like start looking online for supports for the type of businesses that you're trying to do, or for the, if you're from a marginalized community, for that community, they are out there. And this is our job to help too. So without you, we don't exist, right? So it takes a village.
Thanks, Dugan. Nerissa, how about you?
I'm gonna have to echo Dugan. I think you have to reach out. It's about building relationships. Business is about building relationships. And if you don't know where to start, or you don't know and you need help in that journey, we can help you. We can help to support that journey in networking amongst our business community. That's how you begin to find vendors that can be integrated into your current supply chain. We can help to facilitate those relationship building and conversations between yourself and vendors. It takes time, but I think that you have to start with relationship building. And if you need support and help with that, reach out to us.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. And I wanted to pull up this report that was produced in September 2020. And I looked at specifically connecting social procurement to supplier diversity, right? I was like, this is exactly what we're talking about. And so just to add on to Dugan talking about, the call for entrepreneurs to reach out for help, that there are systems and processes in place to help ladder and help get them, both finance ready, but also procurement ready, and the work that is being done in many ways around that. And Nerissa talking about, understanding and building relationships. And we've heard repeatedly from Indigenous entrepreneur session as well, that the value of building relationships with communities and understanding who's in your community and who are the businesses that you can purchase from is a really key part. And now that this was the advice from this report that came out, I just wanted to look at it and, say and to just have everyone reflect and be like, is anything missing from this in terms of advice that we would get? And so it's, setting that tone from the top, that this is a direction, that there is a mandate to diversify supply chains. Talks about what Nerissa was just saying, is to understand the context of what's your local business community look like? Where can you potentially diversify? And then their recommendation is to identify a specific group where you want to be able to create and shift changes. And we can see with the federal government, there's been real targets around Indigenous procurement. We see, the movement around increasing procurement from Black-owned businesses. And we can see that other are beginning to set targets around where they want to see significant shifts. There's the certification of diverse suppliers, and there's different ways to have certification. And this is part of that finding, folks. So being able to look at third-party certifications, you can have self-declaration, so that you're not asking for, but you're asking for self-declaration. And then some procurement folks or organizations have set their own certification. So there's different ways that that's turning up. And then relationship building, outreach. And then there's a place of being able to bring in those capacity buildings to train, to implement both procurement staff as well as businesses. So that capacity building on both sides, so that connection is really successful. And I love this part about communicating, collaborating, telling stories, and measuring the impact. So I just wanted to ask Dugan, Nerissa, and Tori, is there anything missing from this list around what purchasers can do? Do you think they captured it?
I think they did a great job at capturing everything.
I thought it was a nice slide. And since they interviewed Bisocial for this, you could see that there's probably some Bisocial in this as well. So do you want to add anything, Tori?
I don't think so. This looks really strong. I think I think my only thought would be, it's a great list, and now you got to actually go put it into action. And that's really key. And I think what we've heard today is especially around measuring the impact, I just want to see more results from these great policies that I've spoke about, and hear stories from Black businesses getting procurement contracts, because I think that's the reason we're having this conversation, is we want to see impact in community, impact in the economies, and we want to see more equity, inclusion, diversity, and access.
Dugan, you look like you got a comment to make, to add in here?
Yeah, just, same as with the entrepreneurs, right? Like look for those communities that can support you, right? So for the procuring agent, like reaching out to us and to Nerissa and like, who do you have in your roster that we can work with, right? So it's that outreach part, but yeah, Tori, you said it perfectly. Like, yeah, it looks like the system is coming together to elevate all of the groups. So it's awesome to be part of.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today, Nerissa and Dugan and Tori. We have our next session is Thursday, February 5th. We're going to have Karen Elliott, who's going to talk about from the District of Squamish, what they've done to connect their procurement to climate change. And we really talk about climate change is connected to social procurement in such a significant way because the impacts of climate change are often felt and increase and exacerbate the social challenges that we experience in communities. And so we can't talk about one without the other. And there's some amazing procurement policies that are taking place that are addressing climate change, as well as trying to create that link and make sure that we're thinking in an integrated way. And we have Yamila Franco bringing the business side of perspective, and she has started some businesses that have specifically done procurement with government. So she has, as well as achieving those climate goals. So we're really looking forward to having that conversation. And finally, if you want to have any more information about the BC Social Procurement Initiative, the membership and the services, hop on our website, take a look, or you can contact Rob Fisher here, and he is the person who's outreach and engagement manager for the BC Social Procurement Initiative. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. This has been great.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.